Hello, I'm John Deere. Welcome back to Living Nonviolence. This is the sixth and the last of our 6 videos for our 6-week class together. And for our last class, I'd like to continue to reflect with you on the challenge before us as peacemakers, as people sent on a mission of nonviolence into the world of violence to do our part to help work for a more just, peaceful, and nonviolent world. Here's quotes from Gandhi and King again. This is what Dr. King said when he won the Nobel Peace Prize. Nonviolence is the answer to the crucial political and moral question of our time. The need for humanity to overcome oppression and violence without resorting to violence and oppression. And here's Gandhi. We have to make truth and nonviolence not matters for just individual practice, but for practice by groups and communities and nations. That is my dream. I shall live and die in trying to realize it. I encourage all of us to pursue that dream too, to join the mission of nonviolence, and so to be students and teachers of nonviolence for the rest of our lives, and to be contemplatives and mystics and practitioners of personal and interpersonal nonviolence for the rest of our lives, and to be activists and organizers of the grassroots movement of nonviolence for justice and peace for the rest of our lives. And also to be visionaries of nonviolence. I invite you to think big, to have a big vision like Gandhi and Dr. King, and to be bold and announce it to the world. Think of the abolitionists. They come along and they're saying they're giving their lives for the abolition of slavery. Everybody laughed at them and said, there's always been slavery, there's nothing you can do. And they were rejected, and they said, no, a new world is coming, a new world of equality. And they lifted up this vision, and they helped people reclaim their imagination and discover human equality. One of the casualties of our awful culture of violence and war is the loss of the imagination. We can't even imagine peace, much less a whole world of nonviolence. You and I are called to be visionaries of nonviolence and to help people reclaim their imagination for peace and what we could be and what the world could become. That's half the battle, if you will, is helping people see, because we're so blinded by our violence. Well, that means we have to go beyond the abolitionists and announce that we are now working for the abolition of war itself, and that this is a totally achievable goal, and for the abolition of poverty and hunger and racism and sexism and nuclear weapons, environmental destruction, and all the systems of violence. That we are announcing a new world of nonviolence. This is what the nonviolent Jesus did. He told his friends he's sending them as lambs into the midst of wolves, which is an amazing image, to announce the coming of the kingdom of God. And we want to be part of that movement, to go forth as people of nonviolence and announcing the coming of a new world of nonviolence. Gandhi actually defined the kingdom of God as nonviolence. It's shocking. He said the kingdom of God is nonviolence. Now, if you're thinking, well, I'm already an activist and doing my part, I just say thank you so much. And I encourage you to keep at it for the rest of your life and not to get discouraged or to give in to despair, but to keep supporting the movement and building the movement and also taking care of yourself along the way and maintaining your peace and your hope and your love and your joy. In other words, to practice sustainable activism. What we're talking about is sustainable, lifelong, committed nonviolence. But if you're sitting there and you're thinking, well, this is nice, but actually there's no hope. We can't make a difference. Things are too grim. I want to share with you a story that was told to me by my friend Howard Zinn a few years ago before he died. He was the historian who wrote A People's History of the United States. He said that after a lifetime of studying all the social change movements in our own history, the abolitionists, the suffragists, the labor movement, the civil rights movement, the anti-Vietnam War movement, he realized one day that they all had one thing in common. Everyone in all those movements was totally hopeless. They had no hope that they were going to live to see the change they worked for. It was very powerful. But then Howard Zinn said he realized that they had one other thing in common. Everyone in those movements refused to give up. Even though they knew they were not going to live to see the change they were working for, they kept working anyway, and publicly, and for justice and peace. They never stopped. They knew it was the right thing to do, that this was the best thing they could do with their lives, that they were sowing seeds for future generations. In fact, as I'm saying this, I'm recalling that Martin Luther King said in a speech about a week before he was killed, he defined hope as the final refusal to give up. You do the good because it's good. You do what's right because it's right. So every day, Howard Zinn said, these grassroots activists just went ahead and did 1 or 2 or 3 tasks for the movement. They did what they could, and they kept at it, and they refused to go away, and that's how nonviolence works. Over time, it builds and grows, becomes contagious, the mindset changes, political will develops in society, and suddenly justice and peace happens. It sometimes looks like it's an overnight thing, but you miss the long haul struggle. It's the determination of ordinary grassroots activists, just like us, that make all the difference. That's what Howard Zinn said. So with that in mind, I urge us to stay with the grassroots movements for the rest of our lives, to keep organizing and keep speaking out and keep taking a stand and keep making the connections and keep taking to the streets and keep marching. These days, I've been helping with Campaign Nonviolence, as in this brochure here. Every September, during the week of September 21st, International Peace Day, we organize hundreds of demonstrations across the country in every state against all the issues of violence. People taking to the streets against war and poverty and racism and handgun violence and mass incarceration and nuclear weapons and environmental destruction, and at the same time calling for Dr. King's vision of a new culture of nonviolence here in our own country. We've had demonstrations everywhere, and I invite you to join it, to go to the website pachebene.org and campaignonviolence.org. I'm also working to organize the Nonviolent Cities Project, where we're hoping to get cities to begin coalescing and working together to become more nonviolent as a community. Well, during these classes over the last 6 weeks, we've been talking about trying to practice and attain that mature, holistic nonviolence of Gandhi and Dr. King and the saints. As I've been saying, of being really nonviolent to yourself, really nonviolent to all people you meet for the rest of your lives, and for all people and all creatures and all of creation, and always to be part of the grassroots movement for justice and peace. I think this is what it means to be a human being, to be nonviolent, to plumb the spiritual and political depths of nonviolence, which of course is about love and truth and justice and compassion. So I encourage you to live nonviolence for the rest of your lives and really fulfill your vocation to be a peacemaker. You will be greatly blessed. 3 questions. First, how can we help fulfill Gandhi's dream to make truth and nonviolence not matters just for individual practice, but for practice by groups, communities, and nations? Second, what sustains you for the long-haul work of peace and justice and nonviolence? What gives you hope? Where do you find the God of peace in this lifelong journey of active nonviolence? And third, I thought I'd end again with the question I began with. How can you integrate more and more those 3 attributes of nonviolence more fully into your life? Practicing nonviolence toward yourself, practicing nonviolence toward all others, all creatures and all creation, and continuing with the global grassroots movements of nonviolence. So I want to thank you very much for joining with me over these 6 classes. I sure hope they were helpful. Please send in any questions or comments and write a little reflection by the end of the week. I invite you also to get a copy of my book, The Nonviolent Life, and all our other resources from Pache Bene, including the workbook Engage, which is a practice book on how to engage with others in nonviolence. And also, I invite you to go to my website, johndeere.org, and there you'll see all my other books and articles and essays on my speaking schedule. My hope and prayer is that the God of peace and nonviolence will bless you and inspire you to live nonviolence for the rest of your life. That you'll always be part of the movement and do your part and fulfill your vocation to be a peacemaker. And God bless you all. Thank you very much, and peace be with you.